party for John and George.
Happy anniversary. Is it?
A rabbi, a golfer, and a urologist walk into a bar. The bartender says, "So what are you drinking, Ernie?"
That's cute.
Thank you. Thank you.
They didn't get it. It's all three.
Before the festivities begin, I wanted to let everybody know just how special this occasion is. Magda and I got married a little over 47 years ago.
Really?
Besides us, the only other person that was there
It's Ernie.
was Ernie.
How many was I there?
Oh, Veronica, you're sitting down. And Richie. He's not here either. Okay. So why was Ernie at our wedding? Well, first of all, he and his sister B were in our carpool to UCLA. I was already in dental school, and we created a carpool of me, Richie, Ernie, and B, who were all younger than me and still undergraduates. By the way, you might find this very surprising, but Ernie and B were never on time. But we're not talking about that tonight. And we're not talking about the Agustin car, the Galaxy 500, nor the Cats car, the Plymouth Belvedere with push-button shifting, except for reverse. What I want to bring up is that for the wedding, we hired Jerry Rosen as the orchestra.
Oh my God.
I remember Jerry Rosen. He was like about the only option. The number of Jewish songs that he was able to play were probably about 4. Some Hora, maybe Fiddler on the Roof, Sunrise, Sunset, the Mazurka, whatever. But Jerry unfortunately got sick and he couldn't sing. So Richie suggested, why don't we ask Ernie Agustin? He knows all the songs. So Ernie was the entertainment at the wedding until after the wedding. Then you were no longer entertained by
Wow. Sang the whole night.
You get big.
Are you going to sing tonight?
Yeah, did I pay you? No, I'm already back.
He had brought home like 6 or 7 of the newest Jewish albums from New York. And Jerry Rosen, I still have he notated. He then listened to all of it,
Yeah.
translated. So at your
Oh,
wedding,
so he did the
all the new music was played that no one had ever
Yeah,
heard.
because then people were like surprised they never heard those songs before. Like She's a Brick House. But I guess Ernie did a good job because we're still married. So what's the most surprising, I just found out recently, you're not gonna believe this. At the wedding, at the Ambassador Hotel that night was a young kid, and he saw you singing, and he made a movie about it called The Wedding Singer, Adam Sandler. He was there that night. But what's interesting is Adam Sandler is not the Armaghi cheer, it's Ernie Agustin. So Ernie has been part of my life for over 50 years. As Richard's classmate at Hillel, UCLA carpool, our wedding, and almost every damn night over the past 35 years.
Wow.
But think of this, if it weren't for Ernie, your vocabulary would not include words like piggle and Zika, which reminds me, is Jerry West known as Zika from Cabin Creek? So we're gonna continue eating, and soon we're gonna start, I guess, Messiah, many Messiahs.
To do so, you are my giving type of words. Driving lesson. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. That's probably not a good analogy. But it would be like my trying to pick out a tie for Harold Katz to wear. Is that a better analogy?
A shirt or a jacket.
That's much. I rise instead to provide my meager efforts in expressing a chorus of Tov, and perhaps some divrei chizuk, words of encouragement, both to the Maggid Shir, as well as everyone else here and beyond this gathering. Andrea and I have expressed in the past, and maybe not often enough, what appreciation and thanks we have for our community and for all who welcomed us almost 40 years ago. It can't be said enough, and so I repeat it again now. The Shermans are who we are, and our family is what they are because of you and because of this community. And no less so, the Swiss I had to be among those few who started Ernie's Daf Yomi group. And so I felt obligated to express my kosoto to the Maggid Shir of this Daf group, recognized literally around the world. People speak about Ernie Agustin's or Dr. Das around the world, and with good reason. Our son Zach was just 13 years old, a bar mitzvah, when in 1996, he accompanied this group in whatever form it had then to Madison Square Garden. I would say his first visit there was not for an athletic event, but for the Syum in 1996. We had a wonderful time. I can't remember, but Ernie, I remember where we had dinner, but I can't remember what was the best, but yeah, but Ernie does. Now, 26 years. Now, 26 years later, three additional Syum have been reached, and we continue in our daily shared journey in the derek of Talmud Torah. We say each morning in our brachas, Talmud Torah Keneged Kula, that the learning of Torah is equal, perhaps we would say, or not against, but yes, equal to everything else that we say in those brachas, what we know we need to do. That learning Torah is equal to all. During this Shiva for Rev Chaim Kanievsky, we should all be supported by the knowledge of his extraordinary efforts and accomplishments in Talmud Torah as we pursue it in our own ways. But even more so, I believe in Rev Chaim's loving concern for the klal above all. As we heard both in Israel, during Shalashidus, and as we heard the Divrei, the different things that have been said in the Hespedim. This group, led by really no other word to use but incredible Ernie. And his accomplishments elsewhere are just as incredible, but Talmud Torah Keneged Kula. And this chevra, as part of the warm and caring community, I've always said tonight, as I have in the past, just what it means to Andrea and I and to our family. We are an outstanding community. And those of you who travel more than I do, just tell me where I should be moving. Okay? If you found something better. So my bracha is that we should be zocher to Yerichas Yomin to 120 and continue to receive the rewards from the Chodesh Baruch Hu for gesund, for strength, and for the brachas for our family and Klal Yisrael. And in the schus of the Torah and mitzvahs that we strive for, the coming of Mashiach speedily and in our days. Amen.
On behalf of everybody, I want to thank Harold and Martha. This is not the first time that they've hosted the Syum.
Not the last.
This is a home of Torah. It's a home of Chesed. It's a home of just opening themselves up. And again, thank you very much for doing so. Our Chabura, our Daf Yomi Chabur is a wonderful Chabur. Everyone participates. We have been doing it by Zoom since COVID, and we do go back on Shabbos. We started again since they moved the clock to at least on Shabbos afternoon. We learn it in the shul. But over the years, I guess for everyone, it's just easier to just click on Zoom and not get into the car and park and get out, go, and I guess we're not all that time is being saved. We're learning more, and so. But the Chabura remains a nice Chabura on Zoom. Everyone participates, everyone, and therefore I think it's very appropriate that each member of the Chabura is going to be Messiah in one of the Meseches. We were zocha to finish Seder Zroim. There's only one Mesech of Seder Zroim brachos, and then we were zocha to finish Seder Moed from Shabbos all the way through Chagiga. We're talking about 10 different Mesechtos, and because of COVID. Because of we couldn't get together and be Messiah. So this actually is a celebratory because it's no more masks. We can sit together and eat. This is one of the first opportunities that we can be Messiah all these Mesechus together. So we have to be grateful for that. And each we've divided up some of the Mesechtos. I'm going to be like the utility man and do the ones that were not chosen. And then we'll be assigned together. And it's clearly a student's mitzvah because of the Syum that we've done. And it's wonderful to have participants of the Daf Yomi who Sydney was assigned with us many times, 2 or 3 times. So was David. And Kenny Alter has joined our Daf Yomi for this cycle. So there's always new, there's always old. But the Chabura started 33 years ago. There's Daf Yomi every night for the last 33 years. And I think that this Chabura has remained, we're a wonderful Chabura because of this connection that we have with Torah. The women who are here at the Syum, is we can't do this without our wives' support. The time that they give us for that. In fact, Susie now, she enjoys sitting along. You don't see her on Zoom, but she follows along. This is an opportunity. Normally we did the Daf Yomi in shul. She gets to participate as well, off camera. And I encourage everyone I know we have a Novi Shir, which is husband and wife, but anyone who wants to participate in the Daf Yomi, you're certainly welcome. But also the fact that you've always supported the husbands, etc., in allowing us to pursue this passion that we have, it's really to your credit. So, Elazar, I think you have brachos. Oh, and everyone has a package. I couldn't download. It was some glitch. It was the source of Daf Yomi, which I think is by Moznai Press. I think it's some kind of copyright thing. Whenever I tried to export it came like a mirror. It's like if you took this in a mirror. So one of the phone calls I got now was a guy who claims he can fix it. But there's a text version in Hebrew books, and that's what we have. So
and we're going to do the Hadron at the end.
We'll do one Hadron at the end.
All of them in the Kaddish.
Harold.
Yes.
Maybe you will do the Harold. Maybe you will do the Kaddish.
Fine, I practice for 2 weeks.
I don't think I too much.
It's so hard to say.
First of all, I give a course of Torah to Harold Magda for hosting this. We really appreciate it. We didn't forget it. We were looking forward to the next time. Come back, and sure enough, you didn't disappoint us. Yeah. And of course, personally, I give a course of Torah to Ernie and Susie for devoting their time, so much of their time to extending the sheer. I feel great after I finish your sheer. You know, it's sometimes I question you but I really get so much out of it this year. I'm looking forward to it. When I finish it, I know I've accomplished something. So anyhow, that's one. Now, one other thing, I started this year when I moved down from Seattle 45 years ago. I learned in the Kollel, and I think the first Rebbe was Rabbi Grossman. One of my chavrusas, one of my dear friends, was Rabbi Syum. That's Johnny's father-in-law, Rishon. He was a very dear friend of mine. We learned the chavrusa all those years we had.
Thank you.
And I still remember him with a smile, and he was one of my first chavrusas in that year. I'll never forget that. So we've been through many Rebbeim, and of course, Ernie is the greatest, and we know Ernie from way back with Susie's parents. Anyhow, sorry to take the time for that, but that's all.
Also, we had, Susie and I had our 7th Shabbat office in your home.
Come a long way. We've come a long way from that. Yeah, so anyhow, Amar Levi Barachia, I used to be based on Knesset. Biosik B'Torah, Zochem Akabel B'nei Shchina, Shema Yechu B'Chayil Achayil, Yireh Elohim Zion. If you go from multitude to multitude, this refers to one who goes directly from multitudes in the base of Medrash to the many people that are in the base of Medrash, from the base of Knesset to the base of Medrash. They have neither the Talmid Chacham, don't have menucha in this world or the next world. So it's a question, why not? Because it refers to the multitude of studying Torah, the academies of the world to come. Even there, the Torah scholar climbs from level of Torah to the next level. The spiritual stature ever increasing. He knows no rest in this odyssey. The work concludes attractive and teaching concerning the benefit of Torah scholars give the world. They increase peace in the world. It's stated, all your sons will be the disciples of Hashem, and abundant will be the peace of your sons. Builders. So which means this is the verse refers to Torah scholars because they generate peace in the world are being builders. And we know that unfortunately we lost our great one, Chaim, who was, they would say that as long as he was alive and learning, there was peace in Israel and peace in the world, basically. So we hope that the new Talmid Chachamim will come up and will continue this. Shalom abundant peace to those who love the Torah. There will be no obstacle for them. So Israel, today Israel and the Parish Baruch explains that this refers to the spadron of various blessings and prayers instituted and made by the rabbis, the Torah scholars, designed to promote peace between God and his people, and consequently God and all the world. And the truth is, as long as we continue learning Torah in the world, there'll be peace in Eretz Yisrael and hope among the Klal Yisrael. Can't really always answer for the rest of the world, as we know. When you have the Shoyim like we have today, we still have to pray that there still will be Shalom. That's it.
What did Allah say?
Period, but it's fine. In one fell swoop is to talk about, are you able on Shabbos to measure, to tie a knot, and to shutter, to like close up a hole? So the Gemara, I went back a little bit farther, previous what's in the handout. Chipaku es hamoor, but tofi, bia, kosher es amkade. Again, there was an incident in which they shuttered the window with an earthenware flask, and they tied an earthenware vessel with a strand of reed grass. So here's what's happening. Okay. Here. there's an alleyway, a narrow alleyway, and in the alleyway is a guy who's about to die. And the tumah rises, goes straight up to heaven. So there happened to be a hole or a window in one of the houses that border the alleyway. So they took, as I mentioned, an earthenware vessel and they plugged the hole. Why an earthenware vessel? Because tumah cannot penetrate an earthenware vessel. So they figured that works. The tumah is not going to go into the house; it's going to go straight up. But will it go straight up? Because there happened to be a barrel that was working as a roof in the alleyway. If the barrel was totally closed, the tumah would not leak out, and it would remain in the alleyway, which would be a problem. So on Shabbos, what someone did is they took a pole and they tied a flask, which is 1 handbreadth wide. If it's a handbreadth or more, the tumah would be able to escape. They tied it with a reed grass, and they stuck it on the pole and they stuck it in there to see if it would fit through the crack in order for the tumah to escape. Okay, that's the situation. Okay, Omar Rabbi Yehuda, Omar Rav. Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, there was a narrow alleyway between 2 houses. Tuma Hoysa Shah, and Tuma in the form of a corpse was there in the alley. Sounds like Los Angeles.
Sounds like behind the shore.
Yeah, that's in the shore. Okay. The Gigo Seduka Munachas al Gabet, and the cracked barrel rested upon the 2 houses, sheltering over the corpse. Ufakto esamor betafia. Before the person died, they had shuttered the window of the house with an earthenware flask. They then, kosher esam kadi begemi. Then tied an earthenware vessel measuring a handbreadth wide with a strand of reed grass and attempted to pass it through the crack in the barrel. Determine whether or not there was a handbreadth size opening in the barrel that would allow the tumah to escape. The Mishnah stated, and from their words, we learned that we may shutter, measure, and tie on the Sabbath. So what's happening here? Well, they use reed grass because for 2 reasons. One, it's not a permanent string. Animals eat reed grass, and also as it dries out, it sort of dissolves. So they're able to use that as a string. You can tie that. So we learned that we can measure because it's for a purpose to allow the tumah to leave. You can tie the knot because the reed grass can break down. It's also edible, and they were also allowed to shutter so the tumah wouldn't go inside the house. Okay, the Gemara recounts an incident that bears upon the law of measuring on the Sabbath. They're giving an example. Ula happened to go to the house of the Reish Galusa, who was sort of the president of the Jewish community from Bowl, right? I forget whatever. He saw Rabba Bar Huna, the Yossi, who was sitting in a tub of water on Shabbos and was measuring it. Omar Ula said to him, when did the rabbi say that one is allowed to measure on the Sabbath? Medida de mitzvah, only if it is measuring performed for the purpose of a mitzvah. The lay mitzvah, but it is not for the purpose of a mitzvah. Me, Omar, did they say then that it is permitted? No. Why didn't you measure the tub? Rabba Bar Rav Huna answers. Omar, he said to him, I am merely busying myself, but I am not measuring for any purpose. So he sort of was allowed to do that because he knew that the tub was not big enough for a mikvah, but he was allowed to sort of casually measure it, and that's how he sort of got around it.
Hey, where's that thing? Hold on a second. It's the wrong way around. Mario, 1 second.
That's it.
Okay, let's go.
Mario, maybe you should stand in the middle.
I can't take a picture of the guy making trouble.
So that I looked at that. Basically, there's a dilemma raised before the saints. If a coin is ritually dominated, another one has a home, which of them can enter perform repairs? Last year, Rashi said that Rav said that the family should enter as is permitted to participate. He was said, if the entire community is ritually impure, even an impure priest can perform the service. Then priest may not serve under any circumstance. The other says that one with a home should enter because he's permitted to eat constant, which indicates that it retains the sanctity of the priesthood despite his blemish. State that they don't decide what it is. We also learn in the Mishnah from Rabbi Shimon ben Nana that whenever the sages permitted an action for you, they granted you only from your own. The Gemara asked with regard to Rabbi Shimon on what basis, what mission they performed with the principle. The Gemara answers, we taught this principle on the basis of the nation there as we learned with regards to one who grew dark, his home. How on even an animal who could not enter Rabbi Shimon said even if he was 15 animals outside the limit, he may enter because what they did, they measured the distance. We put the markers like 15 months before the real end of the. So people have a lead way.
Safety.
The first time said that we may not enter, Shimon says we may enter. His reason is that the limit does in fact extend that far because any area the sages granted for a person is actually permitted to him by Torah law, which is the principle that he's applying next, saying that anything that's forbidden by the rabbis, right? But it's not, if it's by the Torah, you cannot break that rule. All this comes down at the end of this Gemara. Principle on the study that we one time said that if a string broke, one said that if the tide, the Shimon says he may form only a bow. The reason why forming a bow is permitted is that it has to be to the liability of the forming practice. As forming a bow cannot constitute a violation of the category of the prohibited labor of time. Consequently, the same is permitted. However, with regards to tying the knot, which can be of from outside the temple, the sages did not permit it. So the Shimon maintains that the sages permitted only activities whose prohibition involves academic.
And went to celebrate a Pidyon Ben after 30 days. When the child is 30 days old, the father has to pay 5 squim to a Kohen as Pidyon Ben. Boy, mine pshita Pidyon Ben, asher kisham mitzvah al Pidyon Ben, avia ben mavad. They were dealing what brachas are made. So it's pashut that the father makes the bracha on the mitzvah of Pidyon Ben. But Mavarach Baruch Shechianu v'Kimanu v'Gianu Zmanazeh, Kohen Mavarach or V'Yaven Mavarach. So Harold is a Kohen, right? And you give the Kohen 5 slime. So, for example, when somebody inherits money, you say Shechianu because something good happened to the person. So there would be a tzad to say that maybe the Kohen should say the Shechianu because he's getting the money. On the other hand, the father is happy. He's gotten to do the mitzvah of Pidyon Ben. His child has survived to 30 days. So the Gemara says, does the Kohen Mavarach the Kamati Hanoah day because he has the Hanoah, or the Aven Mavarach the Kovet mitzvah? Or maybe the father makes the Shechianu because he's the one who is doing the mitzvah. Lahava Biyani didn't have the answer. Also, Shaul Ben Midrasha. He went to the yeshiva to ask the Talmid Chachamim there the Shaila. Amrullah, they responded with one voice. Avi Aven Mavarach Shtayim. The father makes both of the brachas. He makes the Birchas HaMitzvah. For example, the first day of Sukkot, when we shake the lulav, you say, we make a Birchas HaMitzvah, al Natilas lulav. And then on mitzvahs that come Mizman Lizman, a mitzvah that comes only occasionally, you say a Shechianu. So the same thing here. He says both of the brachas. He says the Birchas HaMitzvah, Pidyon Ben, he says the Shechianu. The Hilchasa, Avi Aven Mavarach Shtayim. And that's the halacha, that the halacha psuka, that the post can bring, that the father says both brachas. So the Gemara is dealing with Imitish Kodosh. Let's say a ger bizman hazeh, a convert. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, they had to bring korbanos. So, should he consecrate money even today? The Beis Hamikdash is not in existence, and wait until the Beis Hamikdash is a problem because maybe if you use that money, you're going to be chayiv me'ilah. If you designate something as hegdish, it's got sanctity of the Beis Hamikdash, and you benefit from that. You're chayiv me'ilah. You have to bring a korban asham. So that's more dealing with that question. Should he do that? Morris says, "Shami Yibon Beis Hamikdash could we shoin him? Maybe the base of tomorrow the Mashiach will come, like some of the people have been saying tonight. The Titrim Chumas Alishkim and Achadosh. Now, if you have all designated money, obviously you build the Beis Hamikdash. So the Matzis Shekel was donated to the Beis Hamikdash for the purposes to buy, for example, the animals that were offered for the Korbanei Tzibur. Every day after bringing all the Satami was bought from the Trumas Alishka. The Korban Musaf was bought from the Trumas Alishka. So that's a new collection. Beis Hamikdash is not going to rely on old money; it's going to rely on new money. So then what are you going to do with this money that was designated? It's Rav Amnuna, Rav Abba, B'Shem Halachic Rav Shimon, and Adav Rav Amnuna, Rav Abba, B'Shem Rav Halachic Rav Shimon, who paskin that there's a dip for regular Machzis HaShekel we shouldn't give. But the ger in a chanami should designate money and put it aside. They made an afkamina between the two. Hadulach perakala, aroikin ustichta masechta shkol. Masechta shkolim, by the way, is the only masechta from Talmud Yerushalmi that we learn. The world community of Daf Yomi learns, so that they have a sheikhs in Talmud Yerushalmi. We learned Talmud Bavli, which was Babylonian Talmud, which became the more accepted Talmud. That eventually the poskim like the Rif, the Rosh, the Shulchan Aruch, the Tur, they based all their halacha psuka based on Talmud Bavli. Talmud Yerushalmi was written primarily by Rav Yochanan in Palestine during that time. There are a lot of things that are not necessarily applicable to Zman Hazeh. The laws of Tumah V'Tahara, the laws of Kachim, etc. Talmud Bavli was more practical and more applicable to the goals that the Jews were living. Okay. Now Masechta Yuma Ken.
All right, so first of all, I wanted to thank Carol Magda, and I wanted to thank especially Rabbi Dr. Ernie Aggie. So I'll just give you a little snippet of shir, is that sometimes some of us are brave enough or awake enough to ask a question, a shaila, and we'll ask it, and the worst answer you can have from Ernie is, we just said that. What do you mean? Then you realize you're dead asleep. So a little bit of a better answer is, oh, that's a good question. Just hold that question. We're going to get to it in a minute. And it's like the next line of the Gemara. So that's pretty good. But the best answer you could get from Ernie is, that's a really good question. And it doesn't happen very often. Then the second thought I was thinking about before Messiah Yuma is that I think Ernie's about 60 something. 60, 61, whatever. So that means that you finish a cycle about every 7.5 years. So that means I may have a sponsor. We have, I don't know, about 9 or 10 cycles left to go. So if we slept through one page, we're gonna get it the next cycle. All right, now Ernie assigned me this, so don't laugh because the end of Yuma talks about seminal emissions. Okay? Now, I thought Ernie would for sure, as a urologist, take this perspective, but he gave it to me. So the bottom line is of the end of Yuma is have a nice day. No, the bottom line of Yuma is that everything works out. Is that you can take something that's bad that happens, and you'll see the rabbis turn around and say, no, it's really a simon tov. Don't worry about it. And you see that many times when you finish a Chumash. Chumash never likes to end on a down note. And you see that also in Parashat Balpeh, that the Rabbanim, they don't like to end on a down note. So even though it's going to start out on a down note, we're going to end on a number. Okay, so I'm going to start like this. It says, Tani Tani Kameder of Nachman, they said in front of Nachman, Haroe carry, a person who sees a seminal omission, beyond like the Purim, Avanaso Mochilim Lo. It's his sins have evidently been forgiven, meaning it's actually a siman tov, because if he had that happen, he must be a superstar. Is that such a bad thing? Basanya, Avanaso, Sidurim, it says, no, his sins have been arranged. So, my Sidurim, what does it mean arranged? It says Sidurim Limadcha, means they're going to be forgiven this year, so don't worry about it. So Tana Debei Rabbi Yishmael, it says a roe carry being a Kippurim, he says it like this. Person who sees carry a seminal mission on Yom Kippur, he says what? He says no, Yida Kol Hashana Kula. You gotta worry all year. V'im also Loshana, but if he makes it through that year, Muftach Lo Sheben Olam Haba. No, he did so much tzedakah, Torah, Masidovin. He made it through the years. He's going to be a Ben Olam Haba. Nothing more to worry about. So Amar of Nachman or Yitzchak, he said, today you should know it's true. Shekola Ole Kula Ra'av V'Husala, that the rest of the world is starved, meaning everybody else is not allowed to procreate on that day. And look what happened to him. It happened on his own. So Kiyasa Rabdimi Amar, Rabdimi Kendi, he said, maybe Shkaya. He said, no, it's not only that, he says he's going to live long and he's going to have children and grandchildren, because the fact that he saw Carrie is not just a siman ra, but the Rabbanim turn around and say, Carrie is like your children. It's a sign you're going to have children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, and you're going to be very, very fruitful. So, Hadran Allah,
So there was Miriam Barbata was a family. She was somebody who kicked in his back and said, Lucas, wolf, look, you're swallowing up the finances of Klal. And her whole shevet, her whole family got rejected from working in the base of it. So because of the act of one person, that the whole family should be subjected to that? Rabbi, it's a big lesson. Rabbi says yes. The Ami Insa. Shuta Dinoka Beshuka. If you see like a child in the market who doesn't say bad language, Oda, it's either he learned it from his father or he learned it from his mother. So again, because of one parent, you're going to ruin the whole family. Rabbi, Oiler, Russia, Oiler, Shchina. That you should hang around with good people. Don't hang around with bad people, because who you hang around with affects you. Look at Baruch Hashem Harchabur. We have such a positive influence on each other. We're a very good example. And in fact, like Kenny said, the Meseches doesn't want to end up with the words Oiler Russia, Oiler Shchina. So it added words. Tov l'tzadik tov l'shchina. That if you hang around with tzaddikim, it's good for the neighbor. Shenemar imu tzaddikim tov, ki prima lem yochel. That for tzaddik it's good. The things around him will be fruitful, and everyone around him will be able to eat from his fruits. Hadlach al-Khalil will sleep the lowest episode. So the Gemara is talking about the Indian of Muktzah. There's major machlokas throughout the Masechet Shabbos and the base as well between, of course, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon holds that there's no Muktzah. Rabbi Yehuda is the one that's machmir regarding Muktzah. We're talking about animals that were sent out to the desert and then they wandered back into the community. Lididi ain't Muktzah. According to me, Rabbi Shimon, there's no Muktzah. But according to you, Rabbi Yehuda, who holds a Muktzah, oiduli, at least admit to me, is Royce, but Pesach, when the animals go out and graze on Pesach and they come back the first time it rains, like right after Cheshvan, the Baisois, those are considered domesticated, and they're not considered. So domesticated animals are going to have less problems with muktzah than animals that you never deal with that are out in the desert. The Rabbanon but the Rabbanon argued. They said, no. Even in that case, they're not considered domesticated. They're still considered laborious. They would be problematic. Ella ki also Rabbi Amar Rav Yochanan Baridi Amar Rav Shimon Chasida. Lo Potter Rav Gamliel Ela Am Shebesavos. This is talking about when they made Birchas Kohanim in a shul, or said that even the people that were in the field get the brachas, even though they're not physically in shul. So they asked questions. Well, what about people in the city? So Gamliel said the only people that get a benefit from the brachas are the ones that they have no chance to come to shul. My time, they are onus rachmani patria, means if an accident happens, you can't prevent it. The Torah doesn't hold it against you. So there they get credit for they receive the brachos for the Kohanim making. But if somebody was in the city and didn't come to shul, he can't stay home and say, I'm going to get the brachos of the Kohanim and I'm just going to lie in my living room. So he doesn't get it. Here, kindness. Who else is So the end of kindness. After 120, in fact, at the final judgment, when everybody took us amazing, it was a final judgment, and at that time, Kadosh Baruch was going to make a circle of tzaddikim. And he's going to sit with them. All the tzaddikim point with their finger to the middle. The Kabbalists talk about, the point and a circle with the axle. That's like Kadosh Baruch Hu with his relationship to everything, to all of us. So the same thing. The tzaddikim will point to Kadosh Baruch Hu with their finger. The Amar Vayamahu, they will say on that day, Hinei Elokeinu Zeh. Right? Whenever you say Zeh, like Zeh Yitnu, like Shkolim, Moshe pointed to the shekel, to the new moon. So Zeh always refers to that you're pointing to something. Hinei Elokeinu Zeh. Kivinu lo v'yoshev. We waited for him. He is our Yeshua. Zeh Hashem kivinu lo nahil b'nezmecha b'Yeshua. We will be happy with his Yeshua. Hanulach b'shlosh prokim. V'slich lo tzech. Masechta Megillah. Kvar Rabbanon. Moshe tiken lehem Yisrael. Sheyisrael v'doshe b'nyon shel yom. Hilchos Pesach v'Pesach. Hilchos Atzeres v'Atzeres. Hilchos Chag v'Chag. Means the pasuk is by Daber Moshe's Modeh Hashem B'nei Yisrael. More learning from there that on each yontif, in fact, we know that 30 days before Pesach and 30 days before the various Yom Tov, we have to start learning the halachos of that Pesach. Certainly Pesach, which is so complicated. But Moshe Rabbeinu was masaking this concept that even on the yontif itself, you have to darshan Hilchos Pesach on Pesach, Hilchos Shuas and Shuas, and Hilchos Sukkos and Sukkos. Hanalach Me'agir, Uslich Lo Yisach. Moed Kadmijah. By the way, I wanted to say something about Johnny Levine. Johnny is one of the founding members of Daf Yomi, starting all the way to the beginning. And even though they've moved there to Israel and made Aliyah, I'm so proud of them. They continue to participate on the various Syum. various Zoom shiurim. In fact, it was Johnny, after the Royce Hall seal at UCLA, who got the idea, who said, besides the Daf Yomi, we should do another limud. And let's do Naf. Are you able to do that, Kurt? Whatever. And meanwhile, we took it on and we finished Yeshua, Shoftim, Mu'alaf as a group. Many of the same group with Daf Yomi are Novi Shir, and it's the credit to Johnny for starting that.
To you for giving it. Okay, first I wish to dedicate my portion of the Syum, the Ilul Nishmas, my mother, Estef's time, who is your side, is Hope Other. We already commemorated in Esisol in Other Aleph, but as a custom, I also, in some fashion, commemorate the Yosef Other Days, and it's this coming Wednesday, so in our memory, I'd like to dedicate my portion.
The Shama should happen.
That's everybody, in my name and everybody else's, of course, to earn it for your devotion, dedication, in spending. We were just discussing earlier that I thought I was in the 6th or 7th cycle, but I guess I went ahead of myself a little bit. So this is the 5th, okay? But Baruch Hashem, that we're able to have done it all these 5 years or so almost. So it's a big school for all of us to be able to participate. Susie, thank you very much. Okay, I just want to give a little introduction of the Gemara itself. The main purpose of Moed Katan is to describe which works are permitted and forbidden in the Chol HaMoed, because these, like in between days, are of lesser holiness than the first and the last is of Yom Tov. The Meseches is called Moed Katan, literally minor festival. That's an introduction to Meseches. Now we'll start from Omar Levi, Kol Hayotze Mebeis HaKnesset Bebeis HaMedrash. Anybody exists from a shul to a study hall in Beis HaMedrash, Beis HaKnesset from a study hall to a shul. Zorche Mekabel Pnei Shechina Shenema. He's zorche to read the face of the Shechina Shenema. Yalchu Mechol Poel should go from strength to strength. Yeroed Elokim B'Tzion. And you should see the Hashem in Tzion. Omar Rashi, Omar Rab, Kamil Chachmim, Ein Lahem Menucho, rest in Olam Shenema, because it says Yalchu Mechol Poel should go from strength to strength. Yeroed Elokim B'Tzion, and you will see, read Hashem in Tzion, meaning that you can see from the previous portion that when you go to learning and you go to shul, you basically will have the schools of seeing the Shekhinah and be able to meet the Shekhinah. And that's why in Shemayim, they do the same thing. As a little quiz, which is actually said, this particular portion was part of another ending of another sentence. Okay, we did. Which one was it? Numbers. Okay, go ahead.
First, I want to thank, of course, Harold for hosting this evening. Also, would like to dedicate Syum to two very special people. To just had the outside for Rabbi Brana, which we were supposed to have. The Syum was supposed to be on the outside, which is Dalet Shvat. Unfortunately, in Israel, that outside got cancelled. And the one that we were supposed to have over here also got cancelled because of the middle of COVID. And then there was last week, Esther and myself, to be in Eretz Israel, and we actually, my brother-in-law made a Syum on the entire Shas. Esther and with it, they spoke, and it was a beautiful Syum. And also, I would like to dedicate this Rabbi Yosef Ben Shlomo Aryeh, and also to my mother-in-law, who also, I have to say, whenever I learned and I had a kasha in Gemara, sometimes the person to go to was my mother-in-law as opposed to my father-in-law. So I would like to dedicate to her. It's Leah Bat Yaakov. Yitzchak. Okay. Close. It's close. And I just want to tell Ken, you something. You talked about what Ernie says about, we just learned that. Wait until you stay in the dub for a couple of years, and he says, but you asked that the last time. Then you're in trouble because you remembers everything. So I would sorry to be the sign over here, Chagiga, which is a phenomenal Masechet. A lot of Agarata there, the Arba Shekos, the Pardes. There's a lot of Kabbalah that comes from that, and it's just phenomenal Masechet. And I was looking at it, and the end starts with Amare Shlafish, Ein Ur Shel Gehenom Sholet Poshei Israel. So I was thinking about this week's Torah talked about Gehenom. I don't know if everybody knows where the name Gehenom comes from. I'm sure. Gehenom. Garbage. It was a garbage dump. The bottom of Yerushalayim was last year, David, with the fire used to burn very hot, and that's how we get the name Gehenom. So I thought it's apropos to make this to finish this week. So that was part of it, and then it says it doesn't affect the bad people. Poshea means, I don't know what you translated, but the bad people of evil doers of Israel. No, Poshea means I think people who just don't follow the law are not responsible for the law. Kal v'chomer mizbeach hazahav. We had a mizbeach hazahav in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash, and they used to burn a fire, and it said, "Ma mizbeach hazahav she'ein alav ela ko'ovid dinar zahav." It had wood, and then it was plated with a thin dinar was a thin coin, a thin layer of gold. And what does it say? Right? The fire never disturbed the gold. Now I don't know, I'm lucky I'm also in the jewelry business. So I know that gold, if you put fire on gold, it melts. So this didn't melt either. So it's talking about that the Poshim, that this is the same kind of thing. Kama shanim ena ushaleteto Poshei Yisrael shemaleim mitzvot kerimon. He says that the Poshei Yisrael, they still have mitzvot. How do they have mitzvot? They have mitzvot like a pomegranate. We know that pomegranate has 630. We use it all the time, and the mitzvot are still there. Like Kenny said, we ending on a very high note here for the whole thing. Dichtiv kepela harimon rakatech. So it says there that it's in Shir Hashirim that basically when you split up a rimon, it's like splitting the rooms of the Beit HaMikdash or the temple. Dichtiv kepela harimon etakeh al tikra rekatech. Don't call rekatech ela reikanim. Reikanim means empty people. So what does it mean? Shebach halachat kama b'kama. So when you talk about this, even everybody in Klal Yisrael, right, is part of Klal Yisrael. And I saw a very interesting thing before I'll say the Hadran, very interesting that during the Chagim, right, they used to, even the Amaretz, person who didn't know halachot would be believed. If they said they were tahor, they would be believed. It was the time that everybody would be believed. Why would everybody believe? Be believed because we want to bring everybody together. We want Klal Yisrael to have achtud. So I just think that just the way that Ernie brings everybody together, we have a chabura, and we should have achtud for Klal Yisrael, and we should have shalom in this world, and we should always be zoichet and sit together and learn together.
Amen.
Amen.
Say Hadran alach omer v'kodesh uslika lam nachsechet chagiga.
Amen.
Give me your doc. You had a hot thing. Hadran alach Seder is drawing the Seder Moed. So Hadran alach. That's what Seder Moed. Seder is drawing the Seder Moed. Los istashim Seder is drawing the Seder Moed. Los istashim L'Obama then L'Obama does. We're song for that Hadran alach Seder. Shedet is coming to say B'lamazet. The day man lo Kanina bar Papa, Rabbi bar Papa, Matthew bar Papa, Achai bar Papa, Mary bar Papa, Rafa bar Papa, Rafa bar Papa, Surcha bar Papa, Adi bar Papa, Dor bar Hard not only to make it suffer. The Finu, the Fias, Amchabez Israel, and the air, Kulano, Naku, it's a thing, it's a Sam Chabez Israel, Kulano, Yodi Shmecha. The Loim days are a Sech of the Shma. Roy Vice Hakman is for Sech of Oil Mili. You leave it some of the Fukak, the Malo Abel. Oil Lashkaf, the Kudafa Kibam Histan. Baruch Ator, and Northern Bane of Fukafa, Amen, 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 Salaway. Moidim Anach, the Fanak, I will say. Shasam doch again Meshwe Beis Medrash, Losam doch again Meshwe Kronos. Shanu Mashkin and they Mashkin. Anu Mashkin and they Soira, they Mashkin and they Potato. Anu Amelim, they Amelim. Anu Amelim Calvin spot. The Haim Amelim, the Ainam Calvin spot. Anu Rotzim, the Haim Rotzim. Anu Rotzim Chalim Abba, they Rotzim Ber Shachas. Shenemar, the Atalim to again the Ber Shachas, Anshe Domim, Umirma Lech to Yimeam, Ani Eftach Ba. Yerushalayim Vadachana was an exchange of their Tanu. The Syum Seder's drawing the Seder Moye. Kain Tazrain Laskil Masechtos, Usform Acherim Lusayme. Lil Model Alame, Lishmar Lasos. Ulakayim is called Divrei Salmut or Resechabia. Uschus Kolatan Noyim Bamivoyim, Samit Chachamim, Yamod, Li, Ulazori, Lanu, Uzarenu. Shalosama Shatarmi Pi Vizari Vizarenu Vizarazari Adola. It is Kayim Bi Ubanu Visalecha Tancha Oisach Shavkatishma Lecha Bakitsasi He to Shichsef Kivir Becha Kivir Yamech Vizil Bashkayim Oirachamin Biminabi Spoil Oisha recover. Adonai Ozlam Yitain Adonai Yvarth
So Avishadash Mirabah, Yihu Osim Istansa, Ula Haya, Messiah, Ula Soka, Yosem Mai Olmo, Will Mivne, Karta, Biflame, Will Shaf Kalala, Hekla, Begava, Umekar, Polfana, Nuchra, Min Ara, Valasava, Polfana di Shamaya, La Asre, Yamla Kedusha Borichu, Chusi Vikari, Yisma Vikari, Vikari, Bishike, the height of all basis or about Golas Monkari, if you remain. Shmei Rab, Yisadav, Yisalev, Yishalal, Shmei Kitshab, Barichu, the Elam of Kapahasa, Visharasa, Tush Bahasa, the Hamosa, the Am Yaron, Yamav, you remain. Yisrael, Tamideon, Tamid, Samideon, welcome to us, Baraisa, Divas, Radidi, Bakal, Sarvasar. Yehei lahon lechon shalom baraba. Kain of achis around the chayin richem is very richay. We're coming kadmon to v'shmai v'arav yom remain. Yehei shalom baraba bin shmai v'chayim alein v'kol Yisrael remain. Who says shalom b'mramo who brought yes shalom alein v'kol Yisrael b'mru amen.
We have to